overtime, where we are in the middle of abbreviating and kind of recapping the weekend for you guys here. I'm Wavepunk, we got Gibbs, we got Shogun on the desk, and we just got done talking about North America, and now we're going to be moving over to the Europe region. I am excited, guys. This has been some fantastic Rocket League action we've had. Saturday was insane. Sunday probably got even crazier for these matches. So to get right into these highlights, every single team showed up in a different way throughout the entire week. We start off with Cowos versus Secrecy, a team that no one's really talking about, but like all the experts are saying Secrecy is the team to watch out for, and Cowos is like, wait, hold on, we might have a bad logo, but our team is great.
That's not a bad logo, that's an awful logo, but Team Secrecy, they have been doing so well off the offseason. This is not the start that they wanted at all. Whilst Cowos, this was not a game they was expected to win, but in the long run of things, that was essential to get that W.
And it just seemed weird from Secrecy, with a lot not playing all that well, a lot of defensive mistakes. Mets and Mog showing up here or there, but not enough. And Cowos with the big win, and they get to move on into the second series with a lot of confidence. In that second series, Cowos going up against Penta Esports. They just picked up where they left off, continued on here. They take it all the way to 5 games, but Penta is able to pull out the win. And Penta, the team that qualified on that last chance qualifier because of the unfortunate disqualification of Zentox, they get a second chance. They made a count go 9-1, and then they show up in this series barely, just barely beating Cowos. A lot of people thought Penta would have had this win a little bit more comfortably, but it came all the way down to Game 5 where they played on Wasteland.
I don't think any team that hasn't qualified up to this point has got more RLCS experience than Penta Sports. They took on Cowos, who were obviously coming up high from their previous win, but they completely shut them down towards the end of that. It took them a little while to get into it, but as soon as Penta got themselves into their own rhythm, they looked unstoppable in that Game 5. And
it was really exciting to see Cowos choose Wasteland as a deciding Game 5, and it backfired. Like it's backfired on everyone else picking on a non-standard map. Penta gets that huge win, and they go forth to play against a Northern Gaming squad a lot of people think could be the #1 team in Europe right now. Yeah, Penta, we saw so many 5-game series on this weekend. You'll start to see the trend here. This one also goes all the way in the end. Northern Gaming able to pull off the win, but Penta makes them work for it.
Yes, and Northern Gaming, this was the start of what was an incredibly tough weekend for them against Penta Sports, obviously taking that up to Game 5, but not quite looking at themselves. They're not really doing as well with that duo of Remco and Maestro. Not quite fitting in just yet, but they've got time.
Yeah, Devos, he kind of turned it on towards the end there, just barely in time, plus Maestro, and then they bring it versus the Leftovers, where you think, all right, so they had a warm-up series, now they get Leftovers, they should probably win this, but the story of this entire week was how the Leftovers played here. The Leftovers showed up and surprised everybody. In this 5-game series, they knock off Northern Gaming, and this wasn't even the biggest dog they were facing this weekend. This was such an impressive performance. Nobody thought that they would be able to best this game. Actually, as Farah, after this particular series, tweeted out like, it's been a fantastic weekend, you know? And then they go into their next series, and it's like, oh my gosh. But this was amazing.
Yeah, and Farah is the person on that team that has never played in the RLCS before, but having those 2 experienced players in the form of Siki and Snasky with him is helping a ton. And now we look here at Flipside versus Leftovers, and this was the one we can start looking at and just go, this team should not be called the Leftovers, they should be called the Marathon, because they always take it as long as possible. And the Leftovers were just happy, like as you said, about Northern Gaming. They're like, we had a great week, it doesn't matter like if we lose the Flipside, and it looked that way at first, going down 2-0, but then Leftovers making the insane comeback, and then we see probably the best call from a Spanish cast ever with the Ferrer goal, which was so much fun to watch. I mean, I think that particular play is a testament to how, if you have good plays, the casting just gets better. I think every single broadcast had an amazing call on that Farah play. And that series started with a 5-1 in favor of Flipside and ends with that sort of play with like a 3-0, I believe, was the scoreline on that final Game 5 as the Leftovers take the win. We saw Farah, he quoted his "That's a fantastic weekend" tweet with the quote, yeah, it wasn't over yet. Yeah, it just kept continuing. And then we get to the point of like, are they for real? Because it's a 2-0 team, the only 2-0 team. And honestly, I think no one knows right now because Europe is so wide open. Well, they've now taken out their 2 biggest dogs, and with those 2 wins, they've pretty much almost guaranteed themselves a spot in at least the playoffs. If they can keep this streak going, however, they can keep it going with only losing maybe 1 throughout the entire season, then they could take automatic qualification to the LAN.
And the question on everybody's mind is, are Leftovers for real? Was this a one-time instance? Are they just going to fall apart for the rest of the season? I personally, though, feel like
you conquered your two biggest enemies right up here in the front. Like, as long as it doesn't go to your head, as long as you keep playing as hard as you were in week number 1, they should be okay.
They should really push for a top 2 seed right now because they just beat 2 really tough opponents. As long as they get like 3 more wins, they have a good chance. And not even worrying about playoffs for Worlds, you don't want to be in that 3 through 6 spots because all these teams are so good.
Now, going back to Flipside, reeling off of their loss from the leftovers, they faced off against their enemy, the team that has constantly been a thorn in their side, Mockit Esports. Interesting situation in game number 1, but it was played according to the rules. They were able to get the win there. It still went to game 5.
Yeah, so KDOP got disconnected. And the rule states if a player gets disconnected, play must go on because teams could start purposely disconnecting and then trying to throw games that way and try and get restarts. So it's just the way it had to be. Flipside were good sports about it. Mockit was also great sports about it. Then the remaining 4 games was an extremely close series, and Flipside just barely beating Mockit. The first time that they have beat them in over 2 months.
Yep, certainly a huge result for them, not going 0-2 in their very first week. So we're not going to get a complete repeat of what G2 had happened to them last season. And then we had this, Pocket Aces versus Mockit Esports in a must-win series for Pocket and Mockit.
And Pocket, they just beat them last week versus Mockit, and I thought that was kind of fluky, but I should not second-guess Pashy. He is a phenomenal player. He showed up once again, and Pocket looks so strong this week, and I will never second-guess them again throughout the rest of the season.
No, it is so much fun to watch Pashy plus literally any other 2 players that he puts together. He makes a team that competes at the top level every single time. Both he and Sicky have put together rosters who are on fire right now and could both qualify for LAN a 3rd time here if they're able to do it. I would be very, very impressed. It's actually kind of going back to the leftovers because, again, they are the story. Someone posted it on Reddit that this would be the only Sicky would be the only player to make it to LAN 3 times under 3 different teams if he were able to pull it off.
Yeah, 6 different teammates would be absolutely insane, and right now it's looking pretty good for them. But on the other hand, for Mockit, like a team a lot of people thought like probably a top 2 team, they probably can't get a top 2 seed at this point unless they go 5-0, hope for some tiebreakers. Now they got to worry about just making playoffs, which could be extremely rough for them.
Yeah, and the biggest problem though is even if they go 5-2 and try and go for a tiebreaker, the 2 teams they've lost to are ones that they would likely have to face off against in that tiebreaker, so they might already have lost that spot.
Exactly. So every single game mattering so much here as we take a look at the European standings. It might not look like much as we've only seen at most 2 matches per team, but still the leftovers crowning the top as the only team to go 2-0 in Europe.
And we see so many ones here. No team really pulled ahead except for leftovers with the toughest schedule of the entire day. But now after all these losses, we don't really know who is the best in Europe, and it's wide open. We saw 4 weeks left. And for Mockit's sake, it's actually pretty good that everyone else lost, that they don't have to make up as much ground because there's a lot of other teams that are only 1 game ahead of them.
Absolutely. So such an exciting weekend there. As you said, leftovers, hardest schedule, and they came through, getting the 2-0 in an exciting fashion. Excited to see how they're going to do as we move forward in this season. But that does it for our recap here of week number 1. We're excited to see where week number 2 will go. But first, we're going to have an interview here with Josh Watson from Psyonix, one of the directors of esports at Psyonix, and I'm excited to hear what his opinions are on the RLCS and on Rocket League esports in general. So when we come back, he'll be here. Don't go anywhere. It's going to be great.